Thank you for joining us in reviewing our analysis on how, if, and when Walgreens should enter the Brazilian marketplace. Sit back and relax while we take you on a full circle risk assessment of this business proposal. As one of the largest countries in the world by size, population, and economy, Brazil presents exciting investment opportunities for Walgreens as we consider our Latin American expansion plans. Brazil is a former colony of Portugal and has a population of over 200 million. Most of the people today still speak and write Portuguese, with very little English understanding. Brazil's largest city is São Paulo, and its economy is the 8th largest in the world. The economic recovery and explosive growth following the global financial crisis has attracted significant foreign direct investment activity, but the more recent car wash scandal threatens to bring down the current government and their president, Dilma Rousseff. In looking at the U.S. and Brazilian Hofstede ratings, a number of differences are apparent. Brazil has a relatively higher power distance and lower individualism dimension than the U.S. While both cultures are around the midpoint for masculinity, Brazilians are far more adverse to uncertainty. These comprise the greatest areas of concern regarding Walgreens' intent to enter the Brazilian market retail pharmacy expedition. Let's look a bit more in depth at the cultural concerns we find. This is just an example of what a cultural work style matrix would look like potentially when talking about Brazil. You can see the functional job description in the first row that corresponds to each of the Hofstede dimensions in the first column. For example, look at how the Director of Planning would feel about uncertainty avoidance in Brazil. They would probably have very high expectations and expect things to run smoothly on a structured time frame. Brazilians value personal relationships and have a familiarity about doing business. Among the behaviors that one must always be mindful of, the keeping of appointments is very important. One schedules appointments 2 weeks in advance, confirms 2 days in advance, and schedules at set times of the day, generally between 10 a.m. and noon, or between 3 to 5 p.m. These meetings are more so formal than informal. Important decisions are communicated in person and with respectful eye contact. It is most helpful to speak Portuguese, but if using an interpreter, make sure to keep the focus on the person with whom you are communicating, not the interpreter. Also use business cards printed in English and Portuguese. And when handling the card to the recipient, make sure the Portuguese side is facing up. At the close of meetings, always shake everyone's hand to show respect. Surprisingly, strict punctuality is not as important, except in São Paulo, being 10 to 15 minutes late is perfectly acceptable outside of Brazil's largest city. When preparing for the meeting, avoid ostentatious displays of wealth. It tends to be seen as a little bit rude. Sensitive topics like politics, religion, and Argentina should be avoided at all costs, as should ethnic humor of any sort. Finally, remember that there are two Americas, North and South. Brazilians see themselves as Americans just as we do, so do not appropriate the term American just for citizens of the United States. Our Hofstede analysis would suggest several areas of cultural concern. First, the disparity between Walgreens and Brazil's power distances suggests that Brazilians' target will likely be led by individuals who possess a lower level of emotional awareness of the customers we serve. Brazilians will be tolerant of this tendency, but since we have a keen understanding of all the elements of the business is vital, the local leadership must be of U.S. origin. Brazilians tend to toward a more collectivist approach. From an HR perspective, we expect in due diligence phase to find that nepotism is not simply rampant but expected. We will address long-term solutions rather than dictating an end to practices that have existed for decades. The high uncertainty avoidance score implies that a country or large enterprise will have layers of bureaucratic processes. Here is where we must draw the line. A strong leader must articulate the benefits of adopting a nimble approach to competition. This cultural shift requires a local voice. Moving away from cultural considerations, let's focus on the Brazilian pharmacy market. Middle-class growth is driving demand for retail pharmacy products and services. According to our research, the total market is approximately $55 billion and growing at a rate of 15% per year. The retail market is highly fragmented with many independent pharmacies and only a few chain stores. The largest three chains combine for a 30% market share compared to the U.S. market, where the top three hold a 62% share. In recent years, there has been significant mergers and acquisition activities. CVS Caremark purchased Brazil's 8th largest drugstore chain in 2013 and has been in discussion to purchase the 2nd largest drugstore chain. Also, with two local chains merged in 2011 to create the largest local chain in Brazil, which were Drogaria and Drogasil. In 2013, there were 334 drugstores opened, which led to almost 4,950 points of scale in Brazil. Therefore, our strategy will be to buy into the Brazilian retail market via one of the top 10 retailers whose value and culture aligns well with Walgreens, and then pursue a deliberate plan to acquire targets in areas that fit our footprint. Should a larger target acquisition present itself, we will consider, but purchasing tends to suggest that customer loyalty is a major factor driving profitability. And with more than 60% of the market significantly fragmented, we see an opportunity. Looking at the top 3 competitors in the market, starting with Ria Drogasil, the market leader with over 1,200 stores across 17 states, but heavily concentrated in São Paulo. Ria is the growth mode, increasing sales more than 21% and 12.5% same store. Then push for Ria is towards a young, healthy demographic and pushing health beauty products especially. Drogaria São Paulo is the 3rd largest drugstore chain in Brazil, with 12,000 employees, 840 locations total. The group is headquartered in São Paulo and had a top-line revenue of over $1.3 billion. CVS tried to purchase this company in 2014, but their $2 billion bid was rejected. The Brazilian consumer can be segmented by gender and age. While all consumers are driven by price, most demographics are heavily influenced by price. This is not to suggest that price alone is the final determinant of consumer decision-making, but that pricing is simply table stakes. Once customers are in the store, they are open to new purchases. Vitamins and supplements are growing categories, and cosmetics and beauty products, of course, are very strong with the younger demographics. One key to building brand loyalty is leveraging online services and e-commerce. Our customers want the ability to self-diagnose, chat with medical professionals via the web, and use technology to monitor overall health. To the degree that we find the right solution, technology will be a heavy leverage point in the pharmaceutical field. Our team endorses the acquisition of local retail chains such as this one. The strategy has several parts, but claimed is the most suitable starting point. With sales of $162 million, we will enter the country in the strategically important southern state of Santa Catarina and take control of more than 300 retail outlets. In addition, Claimed has robust online and mobile presence, which is well positioned for the future growth. The reason for the selection of Claimed has much to do with our culture. The company has positioned itself as a strong ethical player, well aligned with Walgreens' ethos, and most important, in a country where ethics are often highly questionable these days. Claimed has established different business lines, which will be beneficial as we acquire smaller chains. Targets are selected carefully and integrated with the business line where alignment is best. With respect to operations, as we see opportunity for efficiencies in 4 areas. First, the Brazil unit will find some benefit from Walgreens' global contracts with pharmaceutical manufacturers already in our supply chain. We will allow local purchasing to continue to operate on a national basis for brands not global, but we will allow our purchasing power to enhance the bottom line. We see opportunity on the people side here as well. Rotate some promising members of the team throughout alignments in Deerfield to allow us to see what we have and impact some solid training to them. Our sense is that we can learn from each other. Our corporate marketing group will lead on strategy, but be open with the new ideas that the Brazilian team can bring to the table. This will be a challenge, no doubt. With the high power distance most Brazilians are used to, letting the locals have some control is important. We will need to assess the current head of marketing in Brazil to make sure he's the real deal. They will function as more of an execution team, but we must be careful to heed their wisdom. They know their culture better than we do. Once we are established and operational, we'll look for a new acquisition. This is a target-rich environment, so finding a local who knows how to navigate the merger and acquisition world in Brazil will be helpful. We should establish a rapid response team of accounting, finance, HR, supply chain, and a strong, decisive executive leader who can be close attention to detail. Finally, we want to take lessons from our Claimed friends, but we should be careful when expanding our virtual business. Our customers want online help tools and tracking, and our shipping points for virtual orders are in need of significant protection. Organized crime wants what we have, so let's build it carefully and protect it like Fort Knox. And here comes the red team. An important element of our integration is the development of the red team. Once upon completion of the acquisition, a multidisciplinary team formed corporately will be on site in Brazil to identify local candidates for this team, which is made up of the corporate and local members. The red team will ease the integration by providing visible points of contact for staffing, mobility, HRIS integration, training, benefits, culture, and more. For the first year, we will have at least one U.S. team member on the ground at all times in Brazil. The red team builds organizational connectivity, growing relationships naturally and working around our organizational red tape when necessary. Things to consider. A strategic HR profile is just as important as having a strong financial backbone. HR policies and procedures are what keeps people fluent, accountable, and on task. That is why it's important to have most, if not all, the kinks worked out before we even enter Brazil. Since there is a language barrier and a different legal system, the use of partnerships and creating trustworthy relationships with local suppliers in Brazil will be a huge factor. So a look at Brazil today in recent days suggests an economy at total risk. We see an opportunity for growth and expansion, but we need to execute this at the proper time. Walgreens is not the only player interested in investing in Brazil, but we must be ready to execute our process when the day comes. Preparation in advance will allow us to capitalize on our opportunity. Therefore, unfortunately, at this present time, it is simply unadvisable to consider entering the Brazilian market. The current political and economic instability render any foreign direct investments far too risky to consider. Having said that, there will come a time where the market and leadership instability will end, hopefully. When this time comes, the full complement of leading indicators may not yet be showing strong signs of life, but the market will be ready in the future. Before that date, we must attend our strategic plan, refining our business strategy and preparing for entry execution. On the HR side, leadership roles will be filled by experienced expatriate of Walgreens staff, which allow us to begin the grooming process. For strategic reasons, we will insist on an expatriate running the show in Brazil, with locals in key marketing, compliance, and finance roles. A suitable expatriate should be in the controller role in HR, or either. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope you can utilize some of these concepts discussed when doing your own foreign business venture.